Hello, I am Anabultus, and welcome to my explanation of Beto's Cursed Timeline. Today on Artism, we're going to be looking at one of these videos that I have made, and we're going to be looking at it in a more detailed way and really examining the artistic genius or merit behind it. Regardless of whether or not you consider me to be a genius, that's really irrelevant because I think my actions prove indeed that I am. So, anyway, let's get into this. Of course, this video, let me just be very clear on the messaging of this video. This is not actually a political message that I'm trying to send. In fact, I'm not actually trying to send any particular message besides the actual information that is appearing on that screen. In other words, the story itself is the message. So let me just give you some background information on what happened as I was making this video. So I happened to be looking up the national anthem of the Holy Roman Empire, Gott erhalte Franz den Kaiser, which was written by Franz Joseph Haydn about um, Emperor Franz, or Francis the Second, of course, who eventually would become the Emperor of Austria, as he was indeed the last Holy Roman Emperor. And it's a bit sad that such a great empire with a long history didn't have a national anthem before its last emperor. It's a bit sad to me, but that's not really what this is about. Okay, that's not really what it is about. But anyway, one of his friends had translated one of the verses into English. And at the same time as I saw this, I also happened to see memes about Beto O'Rourke saying that his name is actually Francis. Now, to be fair, his name is Robert Francis O'Rourke. So Francis is his middle name, and Beto is allegedly a shortened form of Roberto in the Portuguese. Um, sort of a slang short form, sort of like how people say Bob or of other short forms. But anyway, going back onto this, I decided to make a video sort of expressing this. But this, of course, followed me making a sound file. So I'm going to have a quick listen through this video first before I then get into the visuals, because the sound file is actually the first phase of this meme as it was being developed. So here we go.
All hail the Emperor Robert Francis O'Rourke. Hail victory! Hail victory! Hail victory! God preserve the Emperor Francis, sovereign, ever good and great. Save, oh save him from mischances, in prosperity and state. May his laurels, ever blooming, be by patriot virtue fed. May his worth the world illumine, and bring back the sheep misled. God preserve our Emperor Francis, sovereign, ever good and great.
Okay, so as you may have noted, it begins with an all hail the Emperor, Robert Francis O'Rourke. So, of course, that is making the equation of Robert Francis O'Rourke being the Emperor in this instance, which is then followed up by 3 hail victories, and then is followed up by the actual verse of the song. So let me actually now get into the visuals of it. So let me mute it. But here we have a group of soldiers, okay, and a random Vocaloid mixed in. not actually random. Joanna Haku is my favorite Vocaloid, but that's another story. But anyway, uh, and the reason why Joanna Haku is there among the soldiers is because this 3D animation was made in MMD, Miku Miku Dance, which is an animation program which I use. So it's sort of a meme for me to put it in there just as a bonus. So anyway, the soldiers are hailing the emperor. Now, what you may see is that there's actually an image of O'Rourke in the background here, and this is actually taken from a photograph where I then went into GIMP and I took a crown and I placed it uh, intersecting the photograph. And then what I did is I put a filter on it to make it look a bit more like an oil painting. And that's what I had set on the background for MMD. Now, I had originally instead planned to sort of take the picture and have it sort of more as a portrait, but that was not possible because of the time constraints and my inexperience in attempting to texture models for MMD, which is something that I would have had to do in order to make that work. So instead, I simply put it as a background image. Uh, and it also meant that I didn't have to use a stage as well, but that's another issue. So anyway, if we go into the actual animation, we start out with the camera zoomed out towards here, and as you go in, you may have seen not noticed this exactly, but the actual movement that takes place on the soldier that is speaking at the start. He is supposedly speaking. However, I didn't actually animate any of the mouths or faces of any of these characters. So, so that's actually why we have this particular camera angle. It's so that you can't see that he's not speaking. That's the movie magic there. But what you may notice is that in the motion to bring his hand up to salute, he actually fully stretches his arm out into what has by some been called a Roman salute, or by others a Nazi salute. Now, this is I had originally planned to have this salute be that salute when I imported the soldier into here. And of course, let me just say that doing the animation for these was a little bit difficult because for some reason I couldn't load the animation onto the other characters when I had done the first one, which is this one in the back. Additionally, all these models started out in a T pose, while Haku started out in a more normal pose, which meant that when I actually went in and used the copy paste feature for the timeline of emotions, it meant that the arms were crossed because the joints were in a different position. So I had to manually go in and change that every time that the character moved. Now, the reason I decided not to go with the edgy out there salute is because I'm not actually trying to compare O'Rourke to a Nazi. That's not what I'm saying. And also, let me just be very clear here that even if I had kept the straight arm salute, that still would not technically be a Nazi meme because O'Rourke is being declared an emperor. And if you've ever heard the Horst Wessel lead, what you would know is that the reactionaries, the ones that wanted to restore the monarchy, are actually not very friendly to the National Socialists, and vice versa. They're actually opposing groups. So it seems kind of weird that people try to group them in together when they're actually opposed to each other. It's very interesting, I find, because people say, "Oh, look at these ultra conservatives. Obviously, they're going to be Nazis," but instead, there's other divergent areas that they can go, because there's ones that are monarchists. You've got, especially in the U.S., there's individuals who are called far right who are just libertarians or classical liberals. So there's all sorts of divergent points here that indicate that this is not a binary spectrum that we can place this on. And that's one of the points here, is to demystify these symbols. By the way, these guys are supposed to be US soldiers, or at least that's what I got from the model makers website. 32 Rabbit on DeviantArt, you can find lots of soldier models on that. Which is good because there's actually quite a not a lot of male MMD models out there, or at least they're not as easy to find. So anyway, going back onto that, he actually doesn't leave it out like that. He goes into the full salute here. Now, you see it, the movement then comes across and keeps zooming in on the crowd, because he's actually finished his motion and he just stays in that salute for the rest of the motion. Meanwhile, these characters say "Hail Victory." Now, the reason I used "Hail Victory" is because of the meme. All right, a while back, in one of my mimetic science mimetic science videos, I said that I would ensure that the video would always be demonetized, so that nobody could claim that I was making a profit off of it. And to do that, I said Sieg Heil on YouTube. And of course, people might say that that, of course, is a term coined by the Nazis. And it is a term that was coined and frequently used by the Nazis. But I would like to point out, as someone who is a native speaker of German, that the term itself has no denotative racist qualities at all. In other words, it could have been a term that could have been invented by any other regime of any sort, except for people that actually want to lose, which I honestly don't like those guys anyway. People that want to lose, that's not good. You got to win. You got to win so much that your heads will spin. Donald Trump likes to win, and I don't particularly like Donald Trump for various reasons, but his like the idea that he likes to win is one thing that I do like about Donald Trump. All right, so so this is a sort of a demystification, because a lot of things that are associated with the Nazis actually have no inherent racist qualities or inherent authoritarian qualities in them. So I think it's important, culturally speaking, to reclaim those things so that they can be useful in a different context. And another example would be the Wolfsangel, or the wolf's angle, which is a type of device which is used for hunting wolves. It's a bit of metal, and you put some meat on it, and you sort of catch a wolf like you would a fish with it. Uh, it's a hunting device anyway. But and it's a thing that has been used by Nazis and neo-Nazis as a symbol, but also happens to be on my family crest. So I actually have a vested interest in denazifying those symbols, so that people don't associate things that aren't Nazi with actually being Nazi, such as the Totenkopf is another one, which was used for a long time before the Nazis came to power in Germany. And so I think it's very important that those things are demystified and denazified to some respect. And of course, I know that if I had actually done this while residing in Germany, I could very well have gone to prison for doing that. But anyway, it's not actually Sieg Heil either, now that I say that, because it's actually Hail Victory. So it's English. It's an English language meme. All right, just to be very clear. And also, instead of doing a straight arm salute, they're dabbing. Uh, Let me see if I can pause on a dab. There you go. They're all dabbing. Now, you can't really see this because of the camera angle, but Joanna Haku's outstretched arm, as I had mentioned, because of the different joint arrangement, default joint arrangement on the models, that the arms were different. So I had to actually fix the arm location on that for every frame in which the arm is outstretched to ensure that it actually is up rather than down. But so everybody's dabbing. So it's a very millennial type of meme because everybody's dabbing, and it's also sort of mocking the Nazis in a different respect as well, based upon that. Now, what's also interesting is that I never dab in real life. Let me just be very clear. I will not dab. And that's something that I'd like to make extremely clear so that everybody knows. So they've dabbed and then they're done. So, of course, this again is the picture. Now, it's a bit hard to tell unless you're really zoomed in, but this is actually the picture with the oil effect on it. So if you were to actually zoom in, it actually does look a bit like an oil painting, but zoomed out, it looks like the high detailed picture here. Now, the second picture is completely unrelated. Now, this is actually a very spicy meme. This is, of course, translated by memorytv.org. This is a still from an episode in a children's program in Palestine. Okay, so now people are gonna say that yeah, it's already very edgy, but here you have Fafour, who's uh, the mouse mascot on the show, and he's inheriting the deeds and the key to Tel Aviv from, I think it's supposed to be his father. I don't remember it. I saw it, but I don't remember it. But it's a very emotional scene because this man here, he's about to die. And Farfour is also going to die when the Israelis try to force him to sell them the deed, but he refuses, so they beat him to death. And by the way, this is a children's show, and he is replaced by B. Nahul, who also eventually gets killed off as well after several episodes. So this is a bit of an edgy meme, but it actually has no relation at all to O'Rourke. So every other picture that I use here is actually completely unrelated to O'Rourke, and that's on purpose. But anyway, it's just a nice spicy meme because I had recently been watching some Memory TV, and because of that, that was fresh in my mind. So this is actually related to O'Rourke. Will you let him take your AR-15? Disarm me or hell no? That's the question. Is the Emperor going to confiscate your guns? Now, second unrelated picture here. Glenn Beck, two Glenn Beck memes. You've got a Glenn Beck who's a bit critical here, and he's looking at his future self here, dressed in a meme that is referred to as Woke Glenn, which came out a while back. Why is Glenn Beck on here? I used to watch Glenn Beck, and that's why that's on here. That's why I had made a meme in the first place. But I've actually have a few variations of the Woke Glenn meme that I posted onto Twitter, so you can look that up. But it's a very rare meme, I'd like to say, because he looks kind of like he's a hipster somewhat. But of course, he is kind of a weird guy anyway. So there you go. And of course, AR15 on sale, multiple sales, double sale. Very interesting. While supplies last. Thanks, O'Rourke. Uh, Probably have something to do with that. And next, why is this guy some random image edit of some Moroccan dude on here? Well, this here is Merida Fosse, and in the lore of the Anawiltus and Murad podcast, he is dead. That's the lore. There's a lot of deep lore for the podcast. Kind of not the stuff you really want to dive into. Let me just say that there's some weird stuff out there, and and his podcast is one of those weird things that sometimes you maybe shouldn't know about. So this is actually kind of questionable that I'm putting this on here, but he says he's down with the sus. So I say this video is kind of sus because it's a cursed timeline. So he's there. Even in the cursed timeline, he died, unfortunately. And that's why I wrote a funeral sonnet to him. I actually did write a funeral sonnet for Murad Afasi, just to be very clear on that. And I think the last image is next here. And the last image is the actual emperor about whom the song was originally written. He's wearing, I guess you could call it hose, as was common in the Middle Ages, but as time passed, it became kind of less common, and now is considered kind of effeminate. However, in those days, everybody wore things like that, although probably not as pristine and high quality. There you go. But look at that. Look at that. That guy has some swag. And actually, if you look at him, they're looking from afar, from really far away. Uh, O'Rourke could, if he gets a bit older, be him in appearance wise. I know that's a very long stretch from getting from O'Rourke to a Habsburg Lothringen guy, which means he's not a Swabian like the previous Habsburgs were, because of course the Habsburgs died out, which was a sad moment, I suppose, but a predictable moment as well, considering that they bred a bit too close into the family, and that led to a lot of issues. Even with Emperor Charles the Fifth, you still had a situation where he was considered to be relatively competent, but he still had already signs of all sorts of genetic issues, even with him, who was the greatest of the Habsburgs, per se. You could say that, or you could say Philip II was great, but he took a massive L, so maybe not so much on that. But tell me what you think about this piece of art. Do you think that you agree or you disagree with demystifying symbols so that people can use them? Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I'll be seeing you all next time. Anawiltus over and out.